Hey guys, we're going to do some comparing linear functions today. Guarantee you this will be on the benchmark next week. So let's use the functions f of x equals x plus 3 and the table for g of x to complete the comparisons. We're using less than, greater than, or equal to. So the first one is f of 3 compared to g of 3. F of 3, we're just going to go ahead and plug 3 in for x. So f of 3 is equal to 3 plus 3. Which means f of 3 equals 6. Now to find g of 3, that's where x is 3. So on the table, we find where x is 3, and that means g of 3 is equal to 8. So in comparing 6 to 8, we know 8 is the bigger. So f of 3 is less than g of 3. Now, the slope of f versus the slope of g. We know the slope is whatever is with x, right? And y equals mx plus b, which means that the slope of f here is going to be 1 because there's that invisible coefficient of 1 in front of x. To find slope on a table, we know that we're looking at our first differences on both sides. So, -4 minus -10 is equal to 6, that's 6, and that's also 6. So we're increasing by 6 on the right-hand side, and then over here we're increasing by 3. Since those are all the same, we're just going to compare 6 over 3, which is 2, and I know that 2 is bigger than 1. So the slope of f is less than the slope of g. Last one is going to be the y-intercept of f and the y-intercept of g. Y-intercept is our b, which is our last number. So here our y-intercept is 3. And if you remember from yesterday, finding y-intercept on a table is where x is 0. So the y-intercept of g is 2. So I know that 3 is greater than 2. All right, let's look at some different representations here. We're going to move on to use f of x and g of x, excuse me. Okay, so we've got the table for f of x and the graph for g of x. So let's compare f of -3 to g of -3. F of -3 is going to be right here where x is -3. F of x, or f of -3, excuse me, is -0.5. Now, to find g of -3, I'm going to find -3 on the x-axis, which is going to be right here. And then I just need to go up and see what the y value is at -3 on the x, and that's going to be 4. So I know that 4 is definitely bigger than -0.5. For b, the slope of f versus the slope of g. So slope, again, on a table, we're increasing by 0.5 on the right and increasing by 1 on the left. So I'm just going to write my slope as 0.5. The slope of g here looks like it's just down 1 over 1. So my slope of g is -1. A positive slope wins out over a negative slope every time. And now y-intercept versus y-intercept. So the y-intercept on the table where x is 0. So my y-intercept of f is 1. And then on the graph, it's where it crosses the y-axis. That one's also 1. So these are equal. All right. For these last two problems, I would suggest that you pause the video, go finish them, and then come back and compare your answers to check to see how you did. All right, guys, let's look at this. F of x equals 4x plus 7, and then we have a table for g of x. We have to determine if each sentence is true or false. So we are going to use the equation and the table for these 4 sentences. So part A says the y-intercept of f is less than the y-intercept of g. So the y-intercept of f is 7, and the y-intercept of g is not on here, but we could certainly figure that out. So let's find the slope on this table. We're going up by 2 on the x every time, and then it looks like we're going down by 6 every time. So the slope is going to be -6 over 2 which reduces to -3, which means to get to 0 in the middle here, I would subtract 3 from 7, which would give me -4. So that is false. B, the rate of change of f of x is greater than the rate of change of g of x. We know rate of change just means slope. We already know the slope of g of x is -3. The slope of f of x is 4, so that is true. Now for C, f of 3 is equal to g of 3. G of 3 is -5. And f of 3 equals 4 times 3 plus 7, which is equal to 12 plus 7, which is 19, and that is false. Now for the last one, the f of -1 is greater than g of -1. G of -1 is 7. F of -1 equals 4 times -1 plus 7, which is -4 plus 7, which is 3. And that is also false. Okay, let's look at the second one. We have a graph of f of x and we have a table of g of x, and we're going to look at these 4 things. So first one, the y-intercept of f is less than the y-intercept of g. My y-intercept of f is here at -2. The y-intercept of g is at 1. 1 is greater than -2, so that is true. The slope of f versus the slope of g. Slope of f appears to be up 3 over 1, so that is a +3. Now the slope of g. Let's do our differences. Going up by 1 on the x. The y is going up by 4, so the slope of g is 4, which makes this false. Now f of -2 versus g of -2, where, look, f of -2 you cannot see, but we can figure it out. We know that we're going down 3 and over 1, and f of -1 is right here, and that's at -5. So if I go down another 3 and over 1, that's going to end up all the way down here at -8. G of -2 is -7, and that is false. That one was a tricky one. Hopefully you got that. And then f of 1 and g of 1. G of 1 is 5. I can see that right here at the table. F of 1 is at 1. 1 is not equal to 5. So that is false. If you guys have any questions, I will be having office hours today starting at 2 o'clock.